even after 20 years here and 25, 30 years in the industry, every single day I see a record I've never seen before. And that's really fun. That's really interesting. That you can just, of course you see the run of the mill, you see the same things a lot. You'll see the Billy Joel nylon curtains and all that. But every day I go, oh my God, I've never seen this. Usually, often by an artist that I know of. And but there's just, after 60, 70 years of recorded media, I mean, there are literally probably 2-3 million titles out there. And so you think you know, and then you never know it. And that's always exciting.
And there's as well by Ornette Coleman, this one, I'm collecting records for 30 years now. I saw it once, didn't buy it when I was young, and now I find a copy here, so you can't find that in Europe anymore. Or you have to pay $200 or $300. Here it's $5.99.
Since they had the store since the early 80s, actually.
I've been here 4 times.
Since last summer.
A little over a year since I moved to New Jersey.
3 years?
A few years, on and off, yeah.
Whenever we come to Princeton, we don't live in Princeton, so we live in Metuchen, and whenever we come, we always stop here.
Oh, since I was a teenager. I don't live in Jersey right now, but I'm just visiting right now. But yeah, I guess probably since I was like 15.
Over 20 years. Yeah. Over 20 years.
Probably 4 or 5 years. I'm from Belgium, and I was actually in New York, and I saw in the internet, I learned about your shop. It was interesting to see everything you can't find in New York, you can find it here, and I found this amazing things.
You can come back a month later and you're going to see almost an entirely different store as far as merchandise goes. That's part of what makes it fun to come here, right? You never know what you're going to see. If it was the same dusty old stuff that you come once or twice a year, you don't come anymore. So we don't want that.
I graduated college in 1975, University of Hartford, Connecticut. I was a marketing major. I went to a couple suit and tie interviews, and I said, bleep this, I gotta find something else to do. So I started going around to flea markets, buying up records for a penny, nickel, dime, and honestly, I didn't know the value of the records. And I let people I let customers make offers on the records. They probably got some good deals on some rare records I had no clue about. But I gradually, caught on. Summer was getting over, and I realized, gee, schools are starting up. Kids have lots of spare time, and they got their parents' money. So I started working out deals to get into different colleges and student centers for a day. I'd set up on the streets in Boston. And then finally, around September, October 1976, I got together with my mother and made up this a brochure to send out to college bookstores about what we could do to promote interest in the store after the book rush. A lot of kids, myself included, the only time I ever went to the college bookstore was I had to buy textbooks, the first week of the year. University of Maryland responded. I went there, lived out of my van for a week, first week of December 1976. And then I was in. I started going I set up for a week at a time at University of Connecticut in their student center. Went to University of Syracuse bookstore, Cornell University bookstore, and all in all, including day trips we went for a day, we sold records at 27 different college stores. When I say we, me, and I had a couple guys that helped me out from time to time. Nothing full time or anything. And then after a while, living in a different town every week, I started treating people like cartoons. I was having trouble relating to people, and I went to see a shrink, and the shrink said, "Barry, you got to settle down and open a store." Right now, though, for years we've had a great general manager. His name's John Lambert. In 1986, his first interview, he never showed up. 2 years later, he finally showed up for his interview in 1988. We hired him.
I actually had an appointment for the interview and I was working at the video store at the time, they offered me a job as store manager in the 3 days or something that I had in between scheduled to have my first interview. And a very bad me never even called him or did anything, and just took the store manager job as considerable raise. And then 5 years later, was sort of I wonder if he remembers me. And of course he did, because he's got a good memory. But he was very, very good about it. We had a meeting. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, which was very early for me. Just over here on Palmer Square at the Nassau Inn, and there was 3 different restaurants, and I didn't know which one it was, and I was so panicked about getting the job. But eventually, I went to the wrong one, of course, and then I found the right one, and it was very intense. He's a very intense man, and this was, of course, 20 years ago. And I just remember him just bearing down on me with his face, just grilling me with questions, and I was like, okay, all right, I think I could take it. Retail for I guess 10, 15 years at that point, but it was definitely a strong impression he left on me right to begin with.
And one day I bought a record collection of thousands of records. LPs that we sell for $19.99 and up, we pull the records out to protect the record, and just the covers are out in stock. So it's much more labor involved than just checking the condition of a record and throwing a sticker on it and putting it out. This collection had over 1,000 rares. So let's say if I'm totally caffeinated at full speed, maybe I could do a maximum of 20 an hour. So I took the whole collection, I dumped it on John's desk, and I said, number 1, John, this is your desk. Number 2, this is your assignment, doing all these rares.
It's an extremely diverse crowd, and I really couldn't possibly pigeonhole. We have everything from 10-year-old punk kids to octogenarians looking for the jazz, and just about everything in between. What do they look for? They look for a tactile experience, is what I think. I think one of the reasons we've succeeded so well is we've sort of shifted from more of a commodities-based store, say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where the new Madonna comes out, you go to the store, you buy the new Madonna like you would go to the drugstore to buy aspirin, and that was just a trip to get that product. Whereas now, I think with the internet and that kind of sterility and that coldness and the non-engagement of that, it's great for getting a product, and you can probably get it cheaper if it's a new product. But where do you go to have that excitement of the hunt? Where do you go to be exposed to new music that you didn't even know existed? Where do you go to rub elbows with like-minded aficionados who are going to clue you into what some of the good music is, or okay, kid, if you like this, you like that. We've definitely tried to make it so that it's more of an event to come here. So you go to the movies, you go bowling, you go to the record store, you spend a couple hours. You can take $20 and you can spend half a day here and walk out with fistfuls of merchandise that you didn't know existed, and that's fun. I mean, you get your hands dirty, you smell it, you breathe it, and that, I think, for a good segment of the population is still an exciting and interesting thing to do.
The atmosphere, and I like buying used CDs. I don't know, I like kind of discovering things that I might not otherwise on the internet. You don't stumble across things in the same way, maybe.
There's a nostalgia, I think, to owning records in general, just for the sake of collecting.
I mean, I love collecting vinyl, so there's something about the sound of records that's just a little more organic than CDs, so you can't find it anywhere else. So.
You know what it is? I still like to have the physical product, even if it's not a piece of vinyl anymore. I still like to have the booklets, the artwork, and to read about it.
I like flipping through it for records. There's not enough punk though.
I like the feel of a record. I don't want to download it. I want to have it. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. The same thing with videos, and the same thing with books. I'm sorry.
Well, the vinyls definitely are a draw, that they actually have the physical medium, which is a plus, and also it's one of those things where it's easy enough to download an album for free, but it's you don't feel completely right doing it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you own music unless you have some physical manifestation of it that you can pick up and carry and look at while you listen to it. So, yeah.
It's much nicer to look at it Maybe the tactile aspect of it, maybe, I don't know.
Well, the vinyl is, you really can't, download vinyl, but it's, CDs, but I look for vinyl and different alternate CDs, imports and stuff, Beatles and things like that. It's a warmer sound, I've been into it. I've got like about 4 or 5 turntables, and if I want to put them on CD, which I have one of those copies from vinyl to CD, and it comes out really well too, and it copies well.
How many records do you think you have in your collection?
About 3,000, I think. Yeah.
How long have you been collecting?
Since the 60s, actually.
Pretty cool.
I still have a lot, some of them I haven't even played, or still in that plastic and everything.
Yeah, I like records, yeah. Downloading something is not really, I'm not interested in. It's better to own it, really own it.
It's not loud enough on the computer, so.
I'm not familiar with using the internet. I'm not computer savvy, so I got to deal with, go the old-fashioned way. But this place is a godsend. It really is. I don't know what I would do without it.
I'd have to say that more than half of my collection, as far as music goes, I've accumulated here and New York City also. And it's expanded my musical horizons. I kind of like the idea of the tactile thing of, albums. I'm into vinyl and also CDs. So there's an aesthetic thing to it.
Thankfully, a lot of people still like physical product, right? It's not like you can't sit home and download a beer. You can't sit home and download a meal. Unfortunately, you can download music.
One time I found a Farabee Lionheart album that I was looking for everywhere, and then I was walking out of the store and it was just kind of sitting on a shelf. It's like it was meant to be,
We could return 10 or 15% of all the new records that were returned as defects. You could return anything sealed that you didn't open. So then one day the companies said to all the stores, okay, you can continue to buy records, but there's no returns. If you overorder, you cannot return them. If you get a return defect, you cannot return them. That basically killed the vinyl industry overnight. The chains just stopped ordering records because they couldn't return them. So then the chains probably, they far outnumbered the independents. And, that was the beginning of the beginning of the end for records.
The most frustrating thing to me about the chain mentality was the homogeneity of it, that what was true in one store had to be true in every other single store, so that if you had an idea that you thought worked well in your store, you weren't allowed to merchandise it or change it in any way, because it would alienate the customers, they thought. I remember it specifically in the early 80s, New Wave was huge. So I carved out a New Wave section in the store. We had maybe 400 or 500 records. We sold tons and tons of vinyl. The district supervisor came along after a couple months and goes, "What's this section here?" I was like, "Oh, it's my New Wave section." He goes, "You dismantle it." I was like, "Well, what do you mean dismantle it? It's my most popular section." I had people traveling from 15 miles around to shop this. No, because it's not in all our other stores. I was like, "Oh, well, I don't care. Either put it in the other stores and let me do my thing. I'm selling music. This is one of the top rated stores in the chain right now because I'm merchandising to my customers." And they made me dismantle it, and it was just one of the most frustrating events. Here with an independent, and again, one of the reasons we're successful is we're quick to adapt. We can try ideas. You got an idea? Great, try it. If it doesn't work, dismantle it. There isn't that top-heavy bureaucracy that just bloats everything and just slows down everything to a crawl, so that by the time you're reacting to a situation, it's too late. Take Borders closing, just for an example. A lot of people are citing the fact that they weren't adapting to their music industry. They didn't shrink their space like Barnes & Noble did. And that was one of their death knells, is they just didn't adapt. Oh, well, this is how we do it, so this is how we do it, as you go out of business.
We've built up a large following in all sorts of genres of music, like classical, jazz, international, whereas maybe a lot of stores like this, concentrate on, rock and, heavy metal being their business, but we take tremendous pride in going across the board. We have a huge selection. The used merchandise is we spend tons of hours laboriously cleaning, checking conditions, and our prices are cheap. We're big marketers. We're looking to buy collections aggressively. We buy a lot of collections. A guy from Mississippi sent us 4,000 classical CDs. We get collections from all over. And there's basically 4,000 classical CDs we need to appraise. Send the customer a check as soon as possible.
Tens of thousands of items come through each month. We usually crest about 50,000 items. That's a lot of merchandise.
This is Barry's file cabinet. Just want to show you my first card. I think started off DJing also. Thankfully, I left DJing to concentrate on records full time. Do you see the card? Don't throw out your records, I'll buy them. As opposed to offering top dollar paid for your collection now. Do you have a magnet card?
No.
Okay, once you get a magnet on somebody's file cabinet, it never leaves, man, until the file cabinet gets thrown out. Anymore. We used to spend over $50,000 a year on Yellow Pages advertising. So in answer to your question, how have things changed? People aren't using the Yellow Pages anymore, and that's how basically we marketed ourselves in the 1980s. We were in like over 20 different books, 3 or 4 different states. Every square inch. How are we gonna get out of here? This is probably the greatest Princeton Record Exchange sign ever, because it shows somebody with a crowded shelf full of records, and then coming in the store and walking out, holding up money, and we're recycling. Besides running a business, we're doing something constructive for society, saving a lot of old record CDs and DVDs from landfill. I'd say we've had to have saved millions of titles in the history of the Princeton Record Exchange. All right, what's next?